What's up guys, and welcome back to Pokemon Sun and Moon coverage video, and today I am talking about the possibility of something linking Professor Kukui with new features in Sun and Moon. It's a bit cryptic at the moment, but it'll make sense when we go through the video. So first, before we look further at Professor Kukui here, we're going to look at the past professors of the Pokemon series. So the very first Pokemon professor in existence and in the world was obviously Professor Oak. Now we all know Professor Oak, pretty nice guy. He actually studied the relationships between Pokemon and people. It wasn't really explained very well, obviously, because when Red and Blue first came out, they were just, you know, on their own. They were only single games, so they didn't think about much apart from, you know, Professor Oak is a Pokemon professor. It was mentioned, you know, offhand, he studies relationships between Pokemon and humans, and obviously that is, you know, sort of explored to a certain degree in the games, but that's his specialty. Then we have Professor Elm of Johto, who studies Pokemon breeding as well as discovering Pokemon eggs. This was a feature that was introduced in Generation 2, so it's sort of like, oh, a new feature, he specialises on it, makes a lot of sense. Then we have Professor Birch of Hoenn. Now, he actually studies Pokemon habitats. This is a bit of a sort of a different one here, because there was nothing introduced in Generation 3 in the Hoenn region, specifically, you know, sort of regarding habitats as such. Yes, you could link it a few ways, but it would be very cryptic. The strongest habitat link I have is that in Fire and Leaf Green, in the Pokedex, you can actually sort Pokemon via habitats, but that's the only link there, and of course it's not very strong, but I just thought I'd mention it there. Moving on to Generation 4, obviously we had Professor Rowan in the Sinnoh region, who studied Pokemon evolution. Now, why is this a notable thing? Well, remember that Generation 4 introduced a lot of pre-evolutions and also evolutions of existing Pokemon. Think basically almost the whole second half of the new Sinnoh Pokemon. You had Electivire, Magmortar, Togekiss, Yanmega, etc. Loads of Pokemon there. It was sort of an evolution frenzy. Many more than we'd seen before. So that certainly links into evolution in that case, and also it introduced loads of other different types of evolution in these games, featuring, you know, Leafeon and Glaceon with their evolutions for the Moss and the Ice Stone, or the Glaceon, whatever stone it would be, Ice Rock and Moss Rock, as well as, you know, Dawnstone, and loads of new evolutionary methods were introduced in Generation 4 as well. Then moving on to Generation 5, we have two Professor Junipers, obviously being the actual Professor Juniper and Cedric Juniper. Professor Juniper studies the origins of Pokemon, and this is referenced several times during the games when you see her, for example, is in the Desert Ruins, I think it is, talking about the origin of Darmanitan. She visits Clink and talks about the origin of Clink, and stuff like that. And Cedric Juniper, who was sort of an ex-Pokemon professor, actually studies sort of something else. He's sort of like a laid-back professor, I guess you can call him. But according to Bianca, he sort of studied, or still studies, Pokemon distribution and biology. Now, why is this a particularly sort of, you know, poignant thing? Well, remember in Black 2 and White 2, you get loads of new Pokemon moving to the Unova region. You know, it's a whole new dex almost. All the new Pokemon from Black and White, plus loads of old ones as well to sort of spice it up a bit. So that's where it links in there. It's not sort of, you know, a clear link, but it links in a bit there, talking about that. So then we come on, obviously Generation 6, we have Professor Sycamore, who of course studied Mega Evolution and sort of everything that goes along with that. What was the new feature introduced in Generation 6? Oh yes, Mega Evolution, which brings us back to Generation 7 and Professor Kukui. Now, what does Professor Kukui specialise in? Pokemon attacks or moves. Now, what does this mean? Well, you could certainly read it as it's a link to, oh my god, they're going to introduce a new feature regarding Pokemon moves, you know? It could certainly do something like that. You know, Mega Evolution was introduced and Sycamore studied it. Loads of new evolutions were introduced, and, you know, evolution types in Generation 4. Rowan studied that. Breeding in Generation 2. Elm studied that. So it's very sort of understandable to draw sort of a link from there. Now, what could this new sort of, you know, sort of feature with the attacks be? Well, a lot of people theorise that it could be a fifth move, so that every Pokemon could learn 4 moves. And this is supported by this image here, you can see, which is sort of it gives you some details for the moves for a Pokemon. You can see Tackle taking up the first slot, and then the numbers down each sort of gradient colour. You can see there are actually 5 gradient colours, and but there's only 4 moves. What's the last 5th slot for? Well, so a lot of people are thinking, oh yeah, she could get a 5th move in there, great. However, there's this next screenshot sort of disproves that, which is an in-battle screenshot, which is when you select your moves, because you can see here Pound, Water Gun, Growl and Disarming Voice, and there's no space for the 5th move, so where would it go? Surely if they were going to have 5 moves as a possibility, you would have a 5th move space at the bottom there, but no, there was not. So why is that? Well, it's possible that the 5th slot on the first screenshot could be for the held item, just to sort of give, to display the information to you there, while so instead of having to have one screen for the moves and then another screen for like info and item, they just slung the item with the moves there. That's possible there, but there's no real evidence suggesting we're going to get a 5th move. What is more likely, in my opinion, is that we could see the introduction of more dual type moves. There was one dual type move introduced in X and Y, sort of under the radar almost, and this was Flying Press, which dealt both flying and fighting type damage, while being a fighting type move of course. So it's possible we could see a few more of these moves introduced, and Kukui could be sort of investigating or studying these. It's certainly a possibility, although it would be a bit weird. Why would they introduce one in X and Y if the feature was going to sort of come in properly later on, unless it was just a tease, of course. It's a mess really. The dual type move things, either needs to be put in this generation, or it's just going to be this extra feature, because otherwise it's a bit pointless really if it's just for one move. You're getting everyone excited for a dual type move, and it's just not going to happen. Another possibility that I could see happening is the fact that we got Tapu Koko revealed recently, and we found out that its move is, or its ability rather, is I can't remember the name of the ability now, but it basically puts electric terrain on the battle, which is a Pokemon move. Now it's possible that a Kukui could be studying sort of terrain moves and how they affect the battle and stuff like that, or they could be a particular focus of his research, of course. Terrain, Pokemon terrain and battle terrain isn't moves particularly, but there are moves to use them to put up on the battle, so it's possible that he could be studying it in that sort of sense, but I don't know right now. What I want to know is, what do you think? Do you think that Kukui is gonna, the fact that Kukui is specializing in Pokemon attacks and moves means we're going to get some sort of new feature for Pokemon moves in Generation 7, or do you think it's just going to be, they chose Pokemon attacks because why not? It's really nothing special, just a different sort of thing there. Let me know what you think down below, because if you do think there's a new feature, also decide to let me know, what you think that new feature is going to be. Do you think there's going to be a 5th move slot? Do you think there's going to be more dual type moves, or do you think it could be related to terrain? Let me know what you think down below, but for now, this is going to be it for me for today. I'll be seeing you next time. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, my friend.